What we do not confront in our childhood reappears as fate in our adult life. Do you think you understand what addiction really is? What if everything you've been told about it is wrong? What if I told you that addiction isn't about weakness, choice, or a lack of willpower? That, in fact, it's a silent cry of pain, a desperate attempt to escape something much deeper. Imagine for a moment a traumatized child carrying invisible scars, growing up in a world that never taught them how to cope with suffering. Now that child is an adult, fighting against something they can't even explain. In this video, we'll dive into the groundbreaking discoveries of Gabor Maté, a renowned physician and author who has spent decades working with people struggling with addiction. He uncovered something shocking. Addiction isn't the root problem. It's a response to trauma, abandonment, pain, and emotional wounds that were never healed. You'll learn why so many people fall into addiction, and more importantly, what they truly need to break free. Stay until the end, because this isn't just a story about addiction. It's about you, about me, about all of us. It's about how trauma shapes us in ways we might not even realize, and how we can finally reconnect with who we truly are. What you hear today could completely change the way you see life. Ready to join us? For over 12 years, Hungarian-Canadian physician and author Gabor Maté dedicated himself to working with individuals affected by addiction, gaining vast and profound insights on the subject. His approach breaks away from traditional views and focuses on one essential aspect: trauma. According to Maté, addiction isn't a choice, a moral failing, an ethical mistake, or a character flaw, nor is it a matter of willpower as many believe. In fact, the way society often portrays addiction is far from reality. Even the notion that addiction is a hereditary brain disease, as some medical theories suggest, falls apart under closer scrutiny. For Maté, addiction is, above all, a response to human suffering. This understanding isn't just Maté's personal perspective. It's deeply rooted in scientific literature and numerous studies. He asserts that addiction isn't inherently a disease or a conscious choice, but rather an attempt to temporarily escape unbearable pain. When Maté began working with addicts, he already had 2 decades of experience as a family physician and was fully aware of the impact childhood experiences have on the psychology and physiology of the adult brain. He noticed that all his patients were grappling with deep traumas rooted in their childhoods. The conclusion became unavoidable. Addiction is, ultimately, a response to suffering. Maté argues that what these individuals truly need isn't judgment or treatments that merely manage symptoms, but help to heal the traumas at the root of their pain. Yet society, the media, and culture often portray addicts in simplistic terms as desperate individuals craving substances without exploring the reasons behind their desperation. Consequently, their behaviors are often labeled as aggressive, manipulative, or unpleasant, ignoring the reality of what drives these actions. According to Maté, behind every addicted person is a traumatized child carrying overwhelming emotional pain stemming from abuse or neglect. This nearly unbearable pain is what they seek to numb in any way they can. Maté's relationship with trauma is not merely theoretical. He has lived through profound experiences himself. When he was just a year old, his mother, desperate to save him during the Nazi occupation of Hungary, handed him over to a stranger separating from him for a month. Although he has no conscious memories of this event, since his hippocampus was not yet fully developed, the emotional memory of abandonment became deeply ingrained. This sense of rejection and abandonment shaped his sense of identity for years, illustrating how early experiences can leave lasting imprints. In his book, The Myth of Normal, Maté explores how what we often consider normal in modern society is, in fact, a source of physical and mental pathology. He emphasizes the profound interconnection between emotions and biology, showing how emotional experiences directly translate into biological responses, shaping brain development and bodily functions. This connection explains how early trauma and stress can predispose individuals to future challenges, including addiction. Maté also challenges the conventional view that disorders like ADHD are purely genetic. Diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 53, he delved deeply into the study of brain development. Although his children were also diagnosed with ADHD, he rejects the notion that this disorder is hereditary. For Maté, ADHD is not a genetic disease, but an adaptation to stress. Children who face chronic stressful situations without the ability to fight or flee often dissociate as a defense mechanism. However, when this temporary response becomes permanent, it can result in long-term issues. He explains that while genes provide a foundation for brain development, it is the environment that shapes how these circuits connect and organize. Secure emotional relationships with present and attuned parents are crucial for healthy brain development. Yet, in modern society, such conditions are increasingly rare. Parental trauma and stress often deeply affect their children, creating dysfunctional emotional and behavioral patterns. Maté uses his own life story to illustrate these concepts. Born in 1944 during World War II, he grew up under the shadow of Nazism, persecution, and fear. His mother, overwhelmed by the terror and grief of losing her parents in Auschwitz, struggled emotionally in her relationship with her son. To survive, young Gabor developed a defense mechanism, disconnecting from his emotions. However, this early adaptation became a lasting personality trait, influencing his life and even his parenting style. Maté reflects on how his own pattern of overworking was an unconscious attempt to make himself indispensable to others, compensating for a deep sense of not being wanted. However, this came at a cost. His children felt his emotional absence, and his wife became overwhelmed. He recognizes how these dynamics illustrate the generational transmission of trauma. Moreover, Maté challenges how Western society approaches illness. He observes that instead of addressing root causes like trauma and environmental stress, medicine often focuses on treating symptoms. This superficial approach neglects the crucial role that emotional and social environments play in mental and physical health. For him, many conditions labeled as diseases are, in fact, normal responses to a culturally abnormal environment. Finally, Maté redefines the concept of recovery. He explains that to recover means to reconnect with a lost essence, the true authenticity that trauma has pushed aside. For him, healing is not about changing who we are, but rediscovering and accepting our true selves. This journey of self-reconnection, while challenging, is essential for overcoming the destructive patterns created by trauma. He reminds us that even in the face of profound adversity, transformation and healing are possible. Maté also delves into the relationship between attachment, authenticity, and human emotional needs. He argues that from infancy, humans require emotional closeness for survival, attachment, and a genuine connection to themselves, authenticity. However, when these two needs come into conflict, authenticity is often sacrificed in favor of attachment. For instance, a child who is reprimanded for expressing strong emotions may learn to suppress their feelings to maintain parental acceptance. While this pattern may be adaptive in childhood, it can lead to a disconnection from oneself in adulthood. This disconnection is central to understanding the impact of trauma, which Maté defines not merely as the event itself, but as the internal response to it. Trauma creates emotional barriers that make it difficult to remain present in the moment and shape negative beliefs about the world and oneself. These emotional wounds continue to surface, influencing behaviors, choices, and even physical health. Addiction in this context is an attempt to soothe the pain caused by these disconnections, serving as a response to trauma. One of the most groundbreaking aspects of his approach is his redefinition of addiction. For Maté, addiction is not limited to substance use, but can also include behaviors such as compulsive work, excessive technology use, impulsive shopping, and more. Any behavior that provides short-term relief but causes long-term harm can be considered an addiction. What unites all these behaviors is the search to fill an emotional void. Moreover, he critiques society's stigmatization of addiction. The belief that addiction is a conscious choice underpins legal and cultural systems that treat individuals struggling with addiction in punitive ways. However, Maté argues that this perspective is profoundly unscientific and overlooks the true nature of the issue, trauma. For him, the solution lies not in punishing or controlling, but in understanding the emotional roots and helping people reconnect with themselves. Maté also explores how cultural and social norms contribute to the mental health crisis we face. He highlights that the relentless pressure for productivity, cutthroat competition, and social isolation are cultural elements that exacerbate stress and trauma. These factors affect not only adults, but also children, contributing to the rise in diagnoses such as ADHD, autism, and other developmental disorders. Instead of addressing the root causes, society often turns to medication and strategies that mask the symptoms. According to Maté, modern medicine also fails to treat people holistically. The biomedical model, which separates mind and body, neglects the impact of emotions, trauma, and environment on physical and mental health. He argues that many conditions we label as diseases are, in fact, normal responses to an unhealthy environment. Our current culture, filled with stress and disconnection, creates fertile ground for physical and mental illnesses. Despite this, Maté firmly believes that healing is possible. He sees recovery as the process of reclaiming something that was lost, a sense of identity and connection to one's true essence. This reconnection, while challenging, is essential to overcoming trauma. Healing doesn't mean changing who we are, but rediscovering and embracing our true nature. Gabor Maté's message challenges us to view human suffering with greater empathy and depth. He invites us to abandon the lenses of judgment and punishment, replacing them with a perspective of understanding, acceptance, and compassion. Addiction, often seen as a sign of weakness, is, in reality, a silent cry for healing and reconnection. For those bearing the scars of trauma and pain, the journey to recovery is not only possible, but profoundly transformative. It serves as a powerful reminder that even in the hardest circumstances, there is a core of strength and authenticity within each of us, waiting to emerge. In a world that constantly pushes us toward disconnection from ourselves, others, and even the environment around us, Maté reminds us that true healing can only occur through reconnection. This reconnection extends beyond the personal. It is also collective. We are called to reevaluate the social structures that perpetuate trauma, marginalize, and dehumanize those most in need of care. The work of healing, then, is not only individual, but also a social responsibility. It begins with each of us by recognizing our own wounds, accepting our stories, and using this understanding to create a culture of acceptance and solidarity. Through this process, we reclaim our shared humanity, breaking cycles of suffering that span generations. Gabor Maté reminds us that trauma is not a life sentence. It is a state, a condition that can be transformed. He illuminates the path back to ourselves, showing that even profound suffering can become the seed of healing and growth. This journey requires courage, patience, and above all, compassion for ourselves and for others. In a world that values strength and productivity over vulnerability, Maté encourages us to see human fragility as a source of resilience and beauty. By accepting our pain and allowing ourselves to feel, we create space for a transformative reconnection. However, this reconnection is not merely an individual cure. It holds the potential to reform society as a whole. Imagine a world where trauma is not hidden but embraced with understanding, where pain is not a source of shame but a call for empathy, where people are seen not as problems to be fixed but as lives to be honored. This is the central call of Gabor Maté's work, to rebuild a more humane world where our vulnerabilities bring us together rather than drive us apart. Ultimately, Maté's work is not just about trauma or addiction, it's about the essence of the human condition. His work is a powerful invitation to remember who we truly are, not what traumatic experiences have forced us to become, but what we have always been at our deepest core. We are beings designed to love, connect, feel, and grow. Above all, we are capable of transformation. And even when the pain feels unbearable, there is a way back, a space where healing can take root and flourish. The journey he proposes is not merely one of recovery, but of rediscovery. Rediscovering oneself, rediscovering others, rediscovering the meaning of living in a world that so often dehumanizes us. At the heart of this journey is the realization that we are not alone in our pain. Each step toward reconnection is a step toward a future where compassion becomes the foundation of our relationships, our choices, and ultimately, our shared humanity.